Blood soaked through my gloves before I even understood what I was looking at. The creature on my table was not a dog, not a wolf, not anything I had studied in 11 years of practice. Silver black fur, ribs cracked open on one side, breathing so shallow I thought it might stop while I stood there frozen. Someone banged on the clinic door behind me, shouting that animal control refused to come near it, that nobody knew what it was, that I needed to decide right now whether I was going to help it or let it die on my floor. I chose to help it. That single choice, made in under 4 seconds, was about to cost me everything I had built. My name is Grace Bellamy. I run a small animal clinic on the edge of town, not far from the new trade outpost the Vantari built when they first landed 2 years ago. Everyone in the area had grown used to seeing their ships overhead, their tall silver shapes moving through the market on trade days. Nobody expected one of their young to end up bleeding in a drainage ditch after some kind of transport accident. Nobody expected me to be the one who found her there, half buried in mud, whimpering in a voice too human to ignore, and too strange to belong to any animal on this planet. I worked on her for 4 hours. My hands did not stop shaking the entire time, but they did not stop moving either. I used tools built for dogs and cats on a creature with 2 hearts and blood that ran pale blue instead of red. I improvised sutures. I guessed at dosages. I prayed to nobody in particular that guessing correctly would be enough. By the time the sun came up, she was breathing steady. She was alive. I sat on the floor next to her cage, completely drained, and allowed myself 30 seconds of relief before my phone began ringing. It was my clinic manager, a man named Oliver Grant. His voice was tight, controlled, the way people sound right before they say something they have rehearsed. "Grace," he said, "I need you to come to my office. Now." I already knew what this meant. I had broken protocol. Alien biologics were considered restricted material, and treating one without clearance from the trade outpost was, according to some clause buried in paperwork none of us had actually read, a serious legal violation. My license was on the line. My job was on the line. Everything I had spent over a decade building was suddenly balanced on the edge of a decision I had made in 4 seconds, without hesitation, because a creature was dying, and I was the only person willing to try. Oliver did not raise his voice when he fired me. He did not need to. He simply told me that the clinic could not be associated with unauthorized treatment of extraterrestrial property, that legal had already been in contact, that my badge and my keys needed to be on his desk before I left the building. I asked him one question before I walked out. "What happens to her now?" He told me she would be transferred to outpost custody within the hour. Processed, logged, returned to whatever authority claimed ownership over her. I did not go home that night. I went back to my clinic, waited until the transfer team arrived, and watched through the window as 4 armored figures carried her out on a stretcher, wrapped in a silver blanket, her eyes barely open, searching the room until they landed on me. She made a sound I will never forget. Not a growl, not a whimper. Something closer to a plea. I did not sleep that night either. I sat in my kitchen, staring at nothing, replaying every second of the surgery, wondering if I had done enough, wondering if she had survived the transfer, wondering what price I would eventually pay for a decision I still did not regret. At dawn, I heard something outside that made my entire body go still. A low sound, rhythmic, almost mechanical, vibrating through the walls of my house. I looked out the window, and my breath caught in my throat. My yard was full of them. Not soldiers, not machines. Vantari, dozens of them, standing in complete silence, arranged in a loose circle around my home. They were massive, easily 8 feet tall, built like something between wolves and warriors, silver-black fur catching the early morning light. At the front of the group stood one with a long scar running across the side of its face, eyes the exact color of the pup I had treated the night before. I did not scream. I did not run. I opened my door instead, because if they had come to hurt me, hiding would not have changed anything, and some part of me needed answers more than I needed safety. "You are Grace Bellamy," the scarred one said. His voice came through some kind of translator device, layered and strange, but perfectly clear. "I am," I answered, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "You treated a pup 3 nights ago." A transport accident severed her tracking signal. We believed her lost. I did not know what she was, I said. I only knew she was dying. The scarred one studied me for a long moment. Behind him, the rest of the group remained motionless, watching, waiting for something I did not understand yet. Among my people, he finally said, when a stranger saves a life at great personal cost, expecting nothing in return, it creates something that cannot simply be thanked away. It creates an obligation, a debt that must be repaid. I do not want anything from you, I said. I did my job, that is all. Your own kind disagrees, he said. We are aware of what happened at your clinic. We are aware of what it cost you. A cold feeling spread through my chest. They already knew everything, the firing, the threats from legal, all of it. Before I could respond, a smaller shape pushed through the legs of the gathered group, moving unsteadily, wrapped in bandages, dragging one leg slightly behind her. The pup, alive, awake, alert enough to recognize me the moment her eyes found mine. She let out a sound that broke something open in my chest, and every single Vantari in that yard turned toward her at once. She moved as fast as her injuries allowed, crossing the grass, pressing herself against my legs the way a frightened child presses into a parent. I dropped to my knees without thinking and wrapped my arms around her, feeling her chest rise and fall against mine, feeling the steady rhythm of a heartbeat I had spent 4 desperate hours trying to save. The scarred one watched this without interrupting. When he finally spoke again, his voice had shifted, softer somehow, though still carrying that strange layered quality. Her name is Ren, he said. She belongs to my daughter. My daughter has not slept since the transport went down. Tonight she will sleep. I looked up at him, still holding Ren against my chest. I am glad, I said, and I meant it completely. You lost your place among your own people because of her, he continued. That is not a small thing. Among the Vantari, such a sacrifice is never forgotten and never left unanswered. I do not need anything, I repeated, though my voice cracked slightly this time, betraying the exhaustion, the fear, the uncertainty I had been carrying since the moment my phone rang the night before. Need has nothing to do with it, he said. This is not a gift. It is a debt, and debts are paid whether the receiver asks for them or not. He gestured, and 2 of the Vantari behind him stepped forward, carrying something between them. A case, sealed, marked with symbols I could not read. They set it down gently at my feet and stepped back into formation. Inside, he explained, you will find resources, medical technology beyond anything your world currently possesses, enough to build a clinic capable of treating any creature that requires your help, human or otherwise. You will also find contact protocols. Should you ever need protection, resources, or aid of any kind, you need only reach out, and my people will answer. I stared at the case, then at him, then down at Ren, who had curled herself into a tight ball against my legs, already drifting toward sleep despite the chaos around her. Why me? I asked. There are other doctors, other clinics. Why does this fall on me? Because you did not hesitate, he said simply. You did not wait for permission. You did not calculate the risk to yourself before acting. In 4 seconds, you chose a life over your own safety. That is rare among any species, including my own. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing at all. He studied me a moment longer, then inclined his head slightly, a gesture I would later learn was a sign of deep respect among his people. You have no pack now, he said. It was not a question. Not as of yesterday, I admitted. Then you have one as of this morning, he said, and something in his tone made it clear this was not open for discussion. What you require, we will provide, for as long as this debt remains unpaid. And knowing my people, Dr. Bellamy, that will be considerably longer than you expect. Behind him, the gathered Vantari began to disperse, moving with quiet efficiency, leaving as silently as they had arrived. Within minutes, only the scarred one remained, along with Ren, still curled against my legs, breathing slow and steady in the warmth of the morning sun. I lost my job that night, sitting alone in an empty clinic, watching a creature I had saved get carried away into an uncertain future. I gained something far larger the next morning, kneeling in my own front yard, surrounded by beings I barely understood, holding a small life that had somehow found its way back to me. I did not have a word for what that made me. Not employer, not family. Something closer to both, and something entirely new. Ren stirred against my legs, opened her eyes, and looked up at me with an expression I understood perfectly, even without any translator at all. Whatever came next, I was no longer facing it alone.